Good evening. Today is the 16th day of January 2017, and we continue with our series, Explorations in Savitri, with our brother Alok. Namaskar. Before I get to the page number, I want to tell you about a letter I received the other day. I think we're in the 67th exploration.
Oh, is it?
And this young lady wrote to me and said, I'm starting at the first one again. So, very, very sweet and very sincere. So we are still in Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 6, Kingdoms and Godheads of the Greater Life. And we are on page 192.
So,
About two-thirds down. Huh?
no, I think we finished a whole movement. I'll tell you the page. Yeah, we finished that part. And we will start
You've got it.
on page 191,
191.
last 4 lines from below.
Got it. Ah, yes, at the break.
Yes, at the break.
Good.
But before I start, you remember one of the days we had thought about reading something from Aurobindo regarding this zone of the vital. And it just so happens, and it's one of those very interesting, we can't use the word coincidences, but grace, that I opened this book, Conversations with Aurobindo, and I read a whole conversation with regard to this. And as some of us may know, today happens to be Pavitra Das' birthday.
Yes.
So it's just right on date that we read something from his conversation with Aurobindo. For about an year, Pavitra Das used to go to Aurobindo every day, and he was given a special time to meet with him. And there's so much. Maybe tomorrow in the Tuesday class, we'll talk more about Pavitra Das. So I'm limiting myself to a conversation of Aurobindo with Pavitra Das, which is about this zone through which people pass and which people can easily mistake. The aspirants, the sadhaks, the neophyte yogis can mistake for the true thing and can get caught up there. As we know, the vital world is a great maker of illusions. So this is a conversation which took place on 11th January 1926. And he asked about Pavitra Das, as we know, had a background in Theosophical Society. Then he went with the Mongolian lamas and had a variety of experiences before he came to the ashram. And he asked about the Theosophical Society and the masters. Now, this context is important because otherwise Aurobindo is not just writing like that. And he mentions it, that I am saying this because you have asked for it. So Aurobindo says somewhere, it's a long conversation. I am reading somewhere in the middle. The other question is to assess the relations of the leaders of the TS with the masters. That is, to determine the nature of the psychical experiences of these persons. Everything in their works, and particularly the little true spirituality one finds there, makes me think that they have never gone beyond the vital plane, which corresponds to what they call the astral plane. And mind you, they spoke about the coming of a new race and a lot of things like that. So, even about the atomic structure. I set aside the case of deception. The first thing to be considered is willful self-deceit, the fact that on this plane, we see what we mentally want to see. This is a complex and marvelous realm where the true and the false are inextricably entangled. Everything appears under a logical and seductive form. Look at, how beautifully Aurobindo uses a word. Organized but finally illusory. Madame B was an amazing woman with strong intuitions, but someone in whom everything could get mixed up. She was incapable of discussing psychical facts critically. She did not want to. Besides, so you see, the critical faculty has its use even in the psychical experiences to learn to discriminate between what is true and what is simply our own mind's contribution. And this impulse, this desire to organize, to exercise and influence, is characteristic of the vital plane. There are influences of all kinds there, whose one desire is to take possession of those who are high placed in order to use them for their own ends. So if one is not high placed, one should simply thank oneself for one's safety. There is one safeguard. Not only the weak are their prey, but also the strong, for it is especially the strong they aim at. What is special about the vital plane is that anyone who has a certain realization there can make another person have the same realization. Now, you see, this is very interesting. It not only creates an illusion in you, it can transmit it through you to others and very rapidly.
And that's how it formed.
Yes, so one can become easily a guru on that plane, giving an experience to others, not Aurobindo is using the word realization. And so easily one can fall into the trap. One should not apply the criteria of ordinary life to this plane. This is the mistake that many spiritists, metaphysicists, etc. make. See, we read, how there is a direct communication, there is a direct interchange of thoughts, feelings, everything. What is missing is the soul.
Yeah.
So all other things can be communicated very powerfully. I know this by experience. I have old disciples who have deviated without my being able to bring them back. So great is the force of deception. Others write to me letters full of visions they have had. They have seen me, and I am supposed to have given them instructions. Now, it was not me, and those instructions I would disown. It so happened that several of them had the same vision at the same time, apart from some small variations of detail. So they would believe, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, yes, everybody. And imagine if one is slightest off guard or with the ego and ambition to become a guru, how easy it would be. Oh, Guruji, all of us had this experience. In spiritual life, their conception is mental and ethical, not spiritual. In spiritual life, one must always be ready to reject all systems and constructions. For a time, a certain form is useful, then it becomes a hindrance. And then Aurobindo gives his own example. In my own spiritual life, since I was 40, 3 or 4 times I have completely discarded and broken the system I had arrived at. This is how one journeys towards the infinite. If our disciples at X could not be brought back, the fault lies in their ambition. That kind of spiritual ambition is so dangerous for a yogi, which endows us with a special importance in human life. It is a big danger, and I think it was responsible for making the Theosophists fall. There is a core of true spirituality there, which we have read. There is something which remains true. Very small, surrounded by a mass of erroneous facts and psychical data. And in time, even the core gets affected. I am answering your question because by breaking through the veil, you will reach this psychical region. Everybody passes through this. Hardly 1% can pass through it due to their mental purity. Their mind does not get attached to objects in order to find satisfaction in them. So one of the dangers is when we start taking bhoga of the experience. And this is a great danger, a powerful pressure. One must be very strong and hold on to the truth in order to resist. This is why I am replying, and not in order to speak about the TS. I have nothing against it, nor against any of the theosophists, to whom I wish the very best. I am not against them. So he is very clear that why he is answering this. Sometimes when we quote something from Sri Aurobindo out of context, it may give a very different connotation, as if he was just passing a remark offhand. But there is a context to it. Then he asks, if these are the conditions of the vital plane, is it nevertheless possible to free oneself from them? These forces obey laws. By knowing them, one can free oneself from them. He is a scientist. And they say that when Pavitrada came onto the scene in the evening talks, suddenly if you see the talks, they take on a scientific turn. Because he had a disciple who was extremely, scientific in his temperament, at the same time, very psychical in his opening to the yoga. So it was a wonderful combination. So Sri Aurobindo says, of course it is possible. Even illusions obey laws. So it's not like, if you know the law, you can break the illusion. Here, there is an aspect of true occultism, not that of the theosophist. This occultism seeks to understand and realize, not to mentally create. It is in a way an extension of science.
And of course, he speaks about Mother, having learned all the occult.
Oh yes, she says that it obeys laws, and you can, if you know the laws. She often would insist that it's not just what you are seeing, but the feel that comes with it. And she would say that this force, which took on a form of Sri Aurobindo and started going around and telling people, creating a religion in his name, a very hard and cruel religion. So she says, he came to me and he wanted me to acknowledge all the faults and apologize for all the faults I have never committed. And then she says, he wanted even that I touch his feet. Now, this is something Sri Aurobindo would never do. He would never ask anybody to do this. He was such a wonderful, I have no word for it. Divinely human, or any word falls short when we speak of Sri Aurobindo.
But we do have Nolini's experience.
Yes.
At the Samadhi, when Sri Aurobindo, it appears to be Sri Aurobindo, in radiant form.
Yes.
And so Nolini says that he's about to bend down and touch his feet. And he looks down and the feet are forked. And he knew then it was the devil.
Yes. So, Mother would also say, there is a rider when she said many things in connection with this. So, she said that I sometimes don't say this because people then get afraid of any experience. So, this also she said, any experience you begin to wonder, is it illusion? She said, no, they should not be afraid. What is important is they should be sincere. You should not stop at experiences. The goal of yoga is not to have these experiences, but to go beyond, to unite with the divine. So if you keep that humility and you are clear about the goal, then things are fine.
They can come.
Yeah, they will come. They come to everybody. That's what he's saying. So with this background, because Ashupati has now gone through this world, the vital world, known as the astral world in many different systems. He has gone through this world. And now he describes to us, he has finished the description. Now he is coming out. So as he is moving out, he has already reached the peak. And as he moves out, that journey is being described. Ever he felt near a spirit in her forms. Its passive presence was her nature's strength. This soul is real in apparent things. Even upon earth, the spirit is life's key. So we must keep on seeking that, keep on turning towards that. And it is there, hidden behind every illusion. And if you are clear about it, that you are seeking that, then it will ultimately you will break free from any illusion.
Now we're listening to the word, this soul is real, but it's S-O-L-E.
Yeah.
This only is real
Yeah.
in apparent things.
Yeah, but the beauty is it would also apply to us well. But here it is, this alone is real. This alone is real. But her solid outsides nowhere bear its trace. So, all the forms that are created, even on earth, in the vital worlds, anywhere, its stamp on her acts is undiscoverable. A pathos of lost heights is its appeal. So, it is trying to recreate life with its such a creative outburst into countless forms. It's trying to create that. And yet, at the end, there is a touch of pathos because at the end of it, it only manages a very beautiful illusion.
Yes.
So, who would be satisfied with an illusion? Only sometimes is caught a shadowy line that seems a hint of veiled reality. Life stared at him with vague, confused outlines, offering a picture the eyes could not keep, a story that was yet not written there. As in a fragmentary, half lost design, life's meanings fled from the pursuing eye. So everything is there. Tremendous experiences, so many forms, gods, goddesses, powers, forces, but its meaning, its purpose, that one thing which alone makes everything worthwhile, that is missing. This one thing reminds me of the Kane Upanishad, which is there in two parts. In the first part, the Rishi says that which the mind cannot reach, but that which the mind can function, know that to be the Brahman and not this that men seek hereafter. That which the eyes cannot behold, but that by which the eyes are motivated to function, to see, know that to be the Brahman and not this that men seek hereafter. Then again he speaks of hearing and speech in the same way. And then in the second part, it shows about, the Rishi talks about the gods who are actually the powers behind all these functioning. So they believe that it's their victory over the Titans after a war. And they are celebrating till the divine appears on the threshold of the unknowable. And they are humbled. They realize that it's not their victory, but the victory of the divine. So in a cryptic way, this Upanishad points towards this, that don't stop at a halfway home of the spirit. Even the gods know it not. Go beyond, and you have to surrender. He has to surrender to the Divine Mother. Ultimately, the greatest of gods finds that it's nothing but the Divine Mother's power which makes them function. So here we have this hint again that one thing is missing, which gives life its purpose, its sense. Life's visage hides life's real self from sight. Life's secret sense is written within, above. We should not be carried away by the forms. We should go deep inside to touch the core. The thought that gives it sense lives far beyond. It is not seen in its half-finished design. So this is why perhaps in some traditions which follow a tendency towards nirvana, and they decry all forms. They go to that extent that don't worship any form regardless. But of course Aurobindo yoga is an integral yoga. So it says in every form you discover the infinite. So that's a subtle difference, but they had the point that so that you're not trapped by anything. But here, because there is a work to do here, and it's a yoga which involves earth and all the forces and beings that have come into the play, you need to discover the secret truth behind all. And that makes it more difficult. And yet we have to be cautious. In vain we hope to read the baffling signs or find the word of the half-played charade. We know the dumb charade. Most of us have played it. You mime a movie, you make some gestures, and you're supposed to guess it. I imagine if you have half, you're not giving the other half. So you just can't know it. You'll play the game. You can continue playing. And it's a guess. Sometimes you may guess it right, you hit it, or you may miss it. So it's like that. So all these forms in the vital world are like half truths, and these are half falsehood. So you have to get past it. Only in that greater life a cryptic thought is found, is hinted some interpreting word that makes the earth myth a tale intelligible. So there are hints and suggestions scattered here and there, which cast its own sense, and you can see it on earth. There are many beings in the vital world which resemble earthly beings. It's a whole script by itself. For instance, someone just asked me in the dispensary a couple of hours before that, what does a white snake mean? Now, it's very interesting that snakes in general would be hostile forces, but snakes are also evolutionary forces. So, of course, white snake is an evolutionary energy. So, which comes to, push you to grow. Similarly, child, fire, everything, all these images are something which are, then you see the earthly plane and you discover, oh, this is what it means. So, there is a sense within it from which the earth derives its sense. Something was seen at last that looked like truth. Looked like. In a half-lit air of hazardous mystery, the eye that looks at the dark half of truth made out an image mid a vivid blur, and peering through a mist of subtle tints, he saw a half-blind, chained divinity. So it's very interesting that at that stage, because in Ashwapati's yoga, he has not yet reached that point from where you have the truth light from which you can see everything. So he's still with that half light, you are looking at the dark side, the realm of ignorance, which is now a little bit lit, and you are trying to fathom, and there is something you fathom there. And what has he discovered? A half-chained divinity. Life is struggling to emerge. In its origin, it is divine, but it is chained by the forms, chained by the consciousness in which it is trapped. Bewildered by the world in which he moved, yet conscious of some light prompting his soul. Attracted to strange, far-off shimmerings. We have a marvelous line.
Oh, yes.
Attracted to strange, far-off shimmerings, led by the fluting of a distant player. He sought his way amid life's laughter and call. Who stands behind ultimately the dance of life? We'll see it in the world soul.
Yes.
The distant fluting will come near. It will be very close. So the call of the infinite, somewhere he feels drawn. He hears it like the flute of the divine flute player. So that is what he navigates. That is the navigation, the call. He's not caught up with things which are halfway. The call. He sought his way amid life's laughter and call, and the index chaos of her myriad steps towards some total, deep infinitude. So he's navigating through this. Around crowded the forest of her signs. It's like a dense forest, magnificent forest. Half lit, delightful, charming, dangerous. Anywhere one may feel, it's a lovely clearing. Let me make my hut and sit in deep meditation here. I have arrived. But not Ashwapati. And that's why he is the yogi of yogis. At hazard, he read by arrow leaps of thought that hit the mark by guess or luminous chance, are changing colored road lights of idea, and are signals of uncertain, swift event, the hieroglyphs of her symbol pageantries, and her landmarks in the tangled paths of time. So Ashwapati had to do it because Aurobindo had this work to do. He had to understand the entire technology of creation. Otherwise, one could well say, why know all about all this. Our goal is the divine. But no, the goal is to bring the divine into creation. So one has to see all the details. In her mazes of approach and of retreat, to every side she draws him and repels, but drawn too near, escapes from his embrace. All ways she leads him, but no way is sure. That's typical of life unless one has touched the divine core. You feel this will make you happy, this will make you satisfied. Ah, at last you have found. And you touch it and you clasp it and it's gone right beneath your clasp.
Yes.
That's and see, it's a very fantastic illusion. And mother was asked why then this illusion is created. She says man is not ready straight away, so he goes from one illusion to another till he becomes ready for that infinite. So you have to move from, like a plant moves from a small pot to a bigger one and then ultimately to the open ground. So that's how one moves. Allured by the many toned marvel of her chant, attracted by the witchcraft of her moods, and moved by her casual touch to joy and grief, he loses himself in her, but wins her not. So there are a lot of people, who speak about spontaneity. Now, this can be very dangerous stuff. Spontaneity, there is a divine spontaneity, which is one with divine purity, when you are moved only by the divine will. But halfway through, if one practices it, as Aurobindo says that anarchy is the beginning and the end. But if you were to do it in the middle, you will land straight in the abyss. So,
Our mother was asked about what would be the ideal
yes.
collective, and she said a divine anarchy.
Yes, a divine anarchy. It is the end, where each one follows his own law. But if you do it in the middle, Aurobindo has cautioned, it will land you straight in the abyss. And many times, spontaneously, mother is inspiring me. I feel inspired by the mother. That's why I am doing it. Shouldn't I follow where nature is leading me? So Aurobindo said that, again, somebody said, after all, nature is also an aspect of the mother. He says, yes, but we are not supposed to follow the mother in the inferior nature, but follow her in the higher supernature. This is that transition. So when the veils are broken, when the ego's control is gone, when reason is illit, the lamp of reason, or one blows it out very early, the discrimination and the discerning mind has not yet developed, and one lands into this maze of experiences, it is invariably dangerous. That's why the psychic must step out first. A fugitive paradise smiles at him from her eyes. Ah, here is my heaven. Life creates.
Beautiful lines.
Yeah.
Oh.
He dreams of her beauty, made forever his. So there is only one forever, and that is the divine. There is no other forever. So, made forever his. He dreams of his mastery, her limbs shall bear. He dreams of the magic of her breasts of bliss. In her illumined script, her fanciful translation of God's pure original text, he thinks to read the scripture wonderful, hieratic key to unknown beatitudes. So it creates for man certain systems, beliefs, theories, experiences that allure, even allurement of paradise, breasts of bliss. You will go to paradise if you follow this Babaji. Naturally, paradise is attractive. And for all you know, I was reading a very interesting joke. Short stories. So one of the short stories was a man died and went up, and God asked him, so how was heaven? So, here is heaven. Here is to create heaven. You can't get this kind of a richness and variety and the psychic touch above all, and a place where divine is incarnated so many times. You can't get this touch you get through matter in any of the worlds. So it was wonderful. So God asked him after departure, how was heaven? We are looking for a heaven in the beyond, missing the heaven here, at least to create the heaven here. But the word of life is hidden in its script. The chant of life has lost its divine note. It is so, so, so true. It's very interesting. This about Veda. Now, there are people who are very particular about, the way Vedas are chanted, the way any scripture is chanted. It's all right. I mean, it's fine. It has its own place and its value. But sometimes I feel in too much emphasis on that, you miss the real touch that comes from the touch of the soul. I've seen actually, not just heard, where a group of Brahmin boys from a particular Veda school who had mastered the art of chanting, and they were brought to inaugurate a particular seminar in which I was present. And they came and mechanically, like you press a tape recorder button, they started off. Yahoo and all those gestures, typical, Brahminical gestures. It was very fascinating, but it was so soulless. See, it's just like putting on a tape recorder, nothing else. There is nothing in it. It was just the mouth which was engaged with perfection, mind you. But the heart was asleep. The mind was making sure that all the words are technically correct.
And the opposite of that, Aurobindo Basu once told me that he had this experience in a Russian Orthodox choir, direct to the soul, and a muezzin who was chanting direct to the soul.
Also, when our inner soul itself is awakened, you can have this anywhere because you feel that touch. At the same time, I have seen that, there's too much emphasis on the externalities.
The form.
Yeah, the form. So obviously there are people all over the world with different kinds of pronunciation because, that's how the language is. Can't they find the divine just because, they are simply not proficient in pronouncing a syllable? He knows the scripture wonderful written in the heart where the real meaning is. The eternal Veda is secret in the heart of every living and thinking creature. And it unfolds itself slowly or swiftly, petal by petal. It's not, okay, that's important, but let's not make that be the soul. So here, these two lines, of course, these lines have many layers of meaning. But the word of life is hidden in its script. The chant of life has lost its divine note. Its cry, somewhere it is there in the story of life. But its cry, it's all the things that it creates, its murmurs, the sounds of pleasure and the sounds of pain, they have lost it. Unseen, a captive in a house of sound, the spirit lost in the splendor of a dream, listens to 1,000-voiced illusions ode. 1,000-voiced illusions ode. And the spirit is chained there, captive to its dream. So it's a world where you dream, but you never really realize.
Sri Aurobindo is leading us in a very beautiful way here as a musician.
Yes.
There are so many words, chant and ode, and we get a little further, and there's hymn, and he uses so many of these beautiful terms of music.
Yes, maybe we can read a few more lines. We have some time.
Sure.
A delicate weft of sorcery steals the heart, or a fiery magic tints her tones and hues, yet they but wake a thrill of transient grace. This I've also felt, there are stages. Like there was a time when I'm sure all of us are moved by the bhajans. It's very nice, And later on also they carry their own appeal. But there comes a time when you get past the bhajans. So they create a kind of emotional appeal at a point of time. And sometimes, of course, they can be very misleading also. I'm reminded of an experience of Champaklalji in Hong Kong. So, Champaklalji looked like a traditional yogi. And so they organized for him a bhajan sandhya, an evening of bhajans. They thought he would love it. After all, he's a holy man. Holy men are supposed to like bhajans. So they started doing their bhajans with whatever equipment, and suddenly Champaklalji got up and moved out. So initially they didn't understand. They thought he has gone to the washroom or something. But people saw, after all, he has got up. Where is he going? He walked straight out of the house. Now, it was everybody's turn to be surprised. So some of them followed him. And he's walking very fast. And here the bhajans are going on. Now they don't know whether to stop or whether to continue. Till, they caught him. What happened? No, he won't speak. But he doesn't want to go back. So ultimately he was calmed down and he was brought back. So very innocently the host said, but we were singing only bhajans in praise of God. So Champaklalji gets a letter pad and writes there, certainly not the God I know. And we had another one where, Dilip Kumar Roy, and he went away, and Indra D's dancing.
Yeah.
He would sing and she would dance. And mother was supposed to watch, and she is Divine Mother, all compassionate. So she watched, but suddenly she got up halfway through and went away. So he was very hurt, injured pride. So he wrote to Aurobindo. Aurobindo had to mellow down the whole thing. He said, no, it was nothing against anything, but she saw a lot of vital forms gathered around here, so she went away. So it was very clear, So how easily, and actually you see some of these now on television, they have these kind of bhajans and dancing to the tune of certain bhajans. And if you look at it, it's nothing but party. But, people want a release, so they have a party. And they have all kinds of dances. They're having a gala time. And that's how it is. A purely vital movement. But unless you know the real thing, you cannot know the difference. It's only when, by the grace of the divine, you have touched something true, felt it, that you cannot be deceived. Or if one is tremendously sincere, one cannot be deceived. So, there are steps and stages, as you were mentioning. Sorcery and, stealing tones and hues, yet they but wake a thrill of transient grace. A vagrant march struck by the wanderer time, they call to a brief unsatisfied delight, or wallow in ravishments of mind and sense, but miss the luminous answer of the soul.
And there it is, just everything you've been saying.
And this is the difference between the traditional bhakti, which is largely confined to the emotional, and the bhakti in integral yoga, which stems from the deep core of the soul, where you want to love, to belong to none else but the divine, nothing else but the divine, which is very different from an emotional fervor and dance and music and lot of sound, after which small effervescence, then it settles down, maybe a little bit, it touches you somewhere, something, but the rest just goes away.
Shakespeare, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Nothing. That's it. Last 4 lines.
Yes.
A blind heart throb that reaches joy through tears. Again, see, it's not necessary to go through this viraha and abhiman. These are the terms used. Life crying. Those tears of longing which are mixed with a lot of pride, wounded pride. In traditional bhakti, one had that. And Aurobindo cautioned. Somebody asked, is it necessary? He said, no, it's not necessary. It's a different experience when tears well out because of the touch of the Lord. They are psychic tears, which are different. But this feeling that, oh, he has not heard me. Oh, he has turned away from me. I will turn away from you. You have separated from me. I'll also separate. That kind of movement which many bhaktas used to go. go through, that sense of viraha and despair. You have abandoned me, things like that.
And pain.
Pain.
Sri
He said
Aurobindo,
it's not
yeah,
necessary.
in a letter I was reading today, he tells this disciple that, you're in love with your illness,
Yes.
and you love the pain. He says, yes, it can be transmuted to joy,
yeah.
but he said, not in your
No,
case.
not in That's true. So one gets caught up in these things rather than the real stuff. A yearning towards peak, forever unreached. An ecstasy of unfulfilled desire. Track the last heavenward climbings of our voice. So, this is the ultimate possibility in this realm of greater life. At its height, it tries to reach out to the infinite, feels the pang of separation, momentary touches and glimpses, and then again falls back into abysses of despair. So, that bhakti eventually moves within this circle. So that's why Shubindu speaks of the sunlit path, where there is a trust, there is dependence, there is longing, but without despair. There is a cry and a yearning deep within, but without that sense, oh, why have you abandoned me? There is perfect trust, because the divine never abandons.